When Apostolis asked me initially to speak at this presentation, I thought, what am I going to say about bunkers that will keep you interested for 10 or 15 minutes? When I wrote the presentation, I thought, how am I going to be able to say everything that we have to say about bunkers in 10 or 15 minutes? So hopefully you'll find it of interest. The Angelicoussis Shipping Group, if you are not aware of the company, they were established in 1947. There are 3 companies operating within the group. One is Annual Maritime Services, the other is Maran Tankers, and the other is Maran Gas. The total operating fleet is 113 vessels on the water, of which 48 are dry ships, 39 are tankers, and 26 are LNG vessels, some on order and 9 operating. A lot of those ships are on time charter. It depends on the commercial arrangements, so we're not buying fuel for the whole fleet. But last year, we bought 500,000 tons of fuel around the world, and we spent more than $300 million. Okay. I wanted to start by talking about the fuel supply chain, because I feel it's very important that we know whereabouts we are in this. It's a very big business. There are refineries in the back of it, with a core business for the refineries is to refine crude oil and sell the resulting products. Between the refineries and the tank storage, we have cargo traders, people like Vitol, with an annual turnover of $300 billion. The tank storage facilities are used to store fuels, to blend fuels, and obviously to load and unload the barges. Here in the middle, we have the owner, and he is usually cooperating with a physical supplier, whose core business, again, is to sell fuel. We have the fuel trader, whose core business is also to facilitate the sale of fuel, very often using their facilities to finance the buyers and the sellers. They often have worldwide networks and good expertise, and they also have purchasing power. Here, after that, we have the barge. Again, their core business is delivering fuel. Every month in Singapore, barges can turn around 8 times their own capacity. So every day they're loading and they're unloading, and their own knowledge and expertise of the barges is significant. And at the end of this long chain is us, the ship. The core business of a ship owner is not to do with fuel. Our core business is to carry cargo, but we're the ones paying for the fuel. From discussions, the end user in the fuel supply chain can often be considered to be the weakest link. We have the least knowledge. The people on the ships are not always trained. They're not so familiar. And it's a potential problem that needs to be considered. The problems that we have to avoid, obviously, are quality problems. Here you can see a fuel oil heater and a filter. These are blocked and no longer working. This is from a present case that we have. Or quantity problems. And this is a typical photo of cappuccino bunkers, the well-known coffee expression which everybody hears about and talks about. I think it's very important that you know where your local bunker risks are. Not everywhere in the world is the same. In Singapore, you have a certain set of problems. In China, you have others. In South America, other issues. And it's very important for all owners and operators to know where the problems might come and what type of problems in order to address those problems. Fuel purchasing, it's often a multi-million-dollar transaction. We receive invoices for $3 million on a regular basis, I would say, less so than in the past when fuel prices were $750 per ton. Now they're averaging about 590, 600, depending on where you buy. The contract terms and conditions of all of these transactions, if anybody actually bothers to read them, they will find that they are very much in favor of suppliers. If you see that suppliers have no liability to deliver fuel on a Saturday, Sunday, or public holiday, it's like the demosio epalilo, although in Greece, you know, it's not reflective of what happens in the shipping business. Of course, these terms and conditions are not actually implemented most of the time, and they're not referred to because most of the time things go reasonably well. But how many people would spend $3 million without reviewing the contract terms and conditions and without realizing what their liabilities are and responsibilities. We feel that the industry should move towards standard bunker supply contracts. Many years ago, attempts were made to establish standard bunker supply contracts. They were not taken up as widely as they should be, partly due to resistance of suppliers and all of the people in the chain above and beyond or before the ship. At the moment, BIMCO are reviewing bunker supply contract, and they're working on a new standard, and hopefully by the end of this year and the beginning of next year it'll be published, and let's see if the take-up is greater this time. You also have to look then, I mean, the other concern for a buyer is the quantity. So you purchase your fuel, then you want to make sure that you actually receive what you paid for or what you plan to pay for. What do you know, or where are the risks? You don't know the knowledge and expertise of your crew. Most of the time you can sit, you can talk in an office, you can discuss when you make appraisals, when you make reviews, but when the actual fuel delivery takes place, most of the time you're not there. And of course, then the fuel delivery procedures and practices. No matter how many times you write things down in a safety management system for this will happen, that will happen, does it happen in reality? These are the questions. So what are your options as a buyer? You can arrange attendance from the office. You can appoint a bunker quantity surveyor. You have to pay great attention, in my mind, to training and selection of crew. And one could say maybe the most important thing, selection of business partners with positive experience, good reputation, and where possible, established relations. It should not be always about $50, in my opinion, because the $50 that you pay, you can very, very, very easily lose. We look to the future. Mass flow meters. It was announced, or it was published, I think, yesterday or the day before, finally, the plan for implementation of mass flow meters in Singapore. So from the 1st of January 2017, all deliveries will be determined, the quantity, with a mass flow meter. And this is applicable from 2015 for all new barges. We have some experience in the group with mass flow meters. We've operated a contract last year in Singapore with a supplier who was delivering using mass flow meters. It was somehow experimental, but we were fortunate enough to gain some experience, and I could say overall I believe it's positive. The thing is, and the challenge there, is that it depends on the delivery of the supplier, how they actually choose to deliver the fuel to you. It's not as simple as the technology works once you install it, that's it, end of story. MFMs measure single-phase flow only. When air is entrapped in the fuel, i.e. when the barge is stripping, they tend to stop, and then delivered quantities can become unreliable. So it depends very much on the barge's approach and how they deliver the fuel as to how effective the technology is. This was our experience, though. We were monitoring those deliveries, and we recorded those deliveries where we felt the readings were reliable. And if you can see, the accuracy of the mass flow meter was oscillating above and below what we feel was a delivered quantity to the vessel, within 0.2%. The standard accuracy that we feel in the industry we should be aiming for manual soundings is 0.5%. So 0.2% is a significant improvement. And I believe also that mass flow meters will work both ways. They will support the suppliers and the ship owners, and they will also save time. So I believe it's a good step forward. The technology does work, but it's subject very much to operational practices of suppliers. There are many discussions in the industry about quality. Almost 25% of 1/4 of samples tested off spec for at least one parameter. Jens Morgensen, the IBIA chairman. Today, 4 years after, only 25 suppliers are supplying in accordance with the new ISO specs. These are recent quotations. I just wanted to examine these a little bit more. The ISO standard, the 2005 or 2010, is the most commonly used buying specification for fuel oil. I would say for fuel oil, the main difference are the cat fines. There are other factors, there's CCAI, there is, I think, on distillates, there are also other restrictions on FAME, things like that. But the main focus for us was fuel oil and the cat fine difference of between 60 and 80. I'll say the next slide we'll talk about that. But in Singapore, we know the 2010 standard is mandatory with these nice words, unless otherwise agreed. Very few suppliers sell 2010 specification. It's available from the few at a premium between $5 and $10. And why is it not available? Because most of the fuel in Singapore is blended. It's imported from traders, it's mixed, it's taken, it's, you don't get a certain standard. So very few people offer back-to-back guarantees 2010. So everybody will only guarantee the easiest one for them, which is the 2005 standard. This is some information, because we looked at the fuel that we got so far since the beginning of January 2013, and we noticed what fuel had cat fines above 60. And we noticed that if you look, low sulfur RMG 380 has the highest percentage. It's 10%. That was 10 cases in 100. For the nice RME 180 fuel, there are no concerns about cat fines over 60. So if you buy 2010 spec for RME 180, there's no point. You're wasting your money. RMG 380 has, well, this was obviously the largest number of deliveries we had. Approximately 3% of the RMG 380 fuel was delivered with cat fines over 60. And for RMK 500, because as a fleet we also consume and burn RMK 500, 6% of the fuel. But what's interesting as well, if you look at these fuels, is that the RMK 500, there is a larger percentage above the level of 40, in the 40 to 60 range. So as a buyer, you have to decide, do I want 2010? Do I want 2005? Is 2005 sufficient for me? That's a choice everybody wants to make. But I would say also look at the grade of fuel you're buying before you insist on what standard you wish. For buyers, there are other alternatives. There are other helps in the market. There are fuel quality benchmarking tools. There's lots of information depending on which sites you subscribe to, Bunker World, Bunker Vision. There is a DNVPS report here, which means that you can benchmark and compare the quality of suppliers. So there's a lot of information out there. The question is, do we all use it? This is my question. A few words on sampling. Sampling is often taken for ships' purposes only. Please note, these are not official samples in case of a claim. Only samples with serial numbers inserted on the BDN are official samples. And if the barge produces a sample, gives it to the ship, and nobody's seen it, you don't know whether that sample is really representative of the fuel you've received on board. As per the IMO MEPC 9647, the MARPOL sample should be taken at the ship's manifold, but this is a recommendation, and if you talk to anybody in the industry, they'll say this is only a recommendation, it's not mandatory. But we're seeing slowly this is taken up especially in Europe. Okay, in Singapore, the sampling point is mandatory at the ship's manifold. Witnessing the sampling process can be a problem, though, because you have to have communication between the barge and the vessel, and often with very large vessels there's resistance to go down to the barge, and likewise from the barge up to the ship. But I believe that a common sampling point helps ensure that in case of a quality claim, both parties are using the same representative sample. From the beginning of next year, the 0.1% regulation is coming into force. How to meet this regulation? Most people will opt for gas oil. You have to ask yourselves, can the means of propulsion use fuel with a viscosity of 2 centistoke at 40 degrees C? Segregation of 0.1% fuel is essential. Do you have sufficient segregated tank capacity? If not, most people would consider converting the smallest fuel tank, and there are certain problems associated with that. The alternative of exhaust gas scrubbers, I have not seen anybody or heard of anybody yet financially committing to that in the Greek market. Alternative fuels exist, but most suppliers have not yet decided exactly where they will supply them, what tank capacity they will give to them, and what barge capacity they will give to them. The compliance with the regulations is going to cost a lot of money. For 500 tons, it will cost $200,000. And for those people that do comply, if it's not enforced properly, it will be a competitive disadvantage. So to sum up, the fuel supply chain is a complex multi-million-dollar business. Most of the fuel is fit for purpose. However, it is blended to the limits set by the standards. If something goes wrong in the supply chain, the owner's sampling has to be representative, and a common sampling point assists in this. Careful purchasing policies with suppliers, knowledge and relationships can reduce the number of problems you face, and alternatives for independent quantity measurement are coming in the future. And please think about 2015, it's not very far away. Thank you.